So the situation is that the whole kingdom was suffering from Vena's atrocious behavior, and the sages who have appointed Vena, they are themselves not able to continue with their sacrificial performances. The whole situation was a big chaos. So the sages thought of first approaching the situation in a gentle way by first trying to pacify King Vena with sweet words, and they began their speech by saying that we have come to you to give some good advice, and therefore please listen carefully, because if you hear our words, then your lifespan, opulence, strength, and reputation will increase. So in this particular section, Srila Prabhupada brings out the the proper duty of the state as well as the citizen, and then how the Vedic civilization is supposed to be organized. These things are very nicely brought out through Srila Prabhupada's purports. So the sages first gave instruction to Vena about a king's duties, and they requested him to think carefully about the spiritual advancement of the citizens. So in the 16th verse as well as 19th verse, the sages were explaining to King Vena that if the spiritual life of the citizens is spoiled because of your activities, then you will certainly fall down from your opulent and royal position. And then later on in the 19th verse, he says that if the king sees that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the original cause of the cosmic manifestation, and the super soul within everyone is worshipped, then the Lord will be satisfied. So the 18th purport, the particular stress is on the following of Varna and Ashrama. And in this way, organizing one's social as well as position or the status in life to worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Prabhupada is writing in that particular purport that the state's duty and the citizen's duty are very nicely explained in this verse. The activities of the government head or king, as well as the activities of the citizens, should be so directed that ultimately everyone engages in devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The king or government head is supposed to be the representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and therefore is therefore supposed to see that things go on nicely and that the citizens are situated in the scientific social order comprised of 4 varnas and 4 ashramas. And Prabhupada essentially elaborates on the Vishnu Puran verse, Varnashrama Acharavata, that particular verse. So ultimately, Krishna is the ultimate purpose of all sacrifice, and Krishna is the Yagya Purush, and therefore he is the enjoyer of all sacrifices. The word Yagya Purush indicates Lord Vishnu or Krishna, Lord Vishnu or Lord Krishna, or any personality of Godhead in the category of Vishnu Tattva. So in perfect human society, people are situated in the orders of Varna and Ashram and are engaged in worshipping Lord Vishnu by their respective activities. So finally, Prabhupada comments in that purport that today people engaged in government service and people who rule over the citizens have no respect for the Varnashram Dharma. They complacently feel that the state is secular. In such a government, no one can be happy. The people must follow the Varnashram Dharma, and the king must see that they are following it nicely. And then in the 20th purport, Srila Prabhupada points to how our own happiness um, can be propelled by doing everything for the satisfaction and pleasure of the Supreme Lord. Because the principle is that when the Supreme Lord is satisfied, nothing is impossible to achieve. For this reason, all the demigods, presiding deities of different planets, as well as the inhabitants of their planets, take great pleasure in offering all kinds of paraphernalia for his worship. So, Prabhupada therefore begins his purport by saying that all Vedic civilization is summarized in this verse. So, Prabhupada is writing, people do not know that the ultimate goal of life is to approach Lord Vishnu and satisfy him. They have taken this materialistic way of life as everything and have become captivated by materialistic activities. Indeed, their leaders are always encouraging them to follow this path, and the general populace, being ignorant of the laws of God, are following their blind leaders down the path of unhappiness. In order to rectify this world situation, all people should be trained in Krishna consciousness and act in accordance with the Varnashrama system. The state should also see that the people are engaged in satisfying the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is the prime duty of the state. The Krishna consciousness movement was started to convince the general populace to adopt the best process by which to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead and thus solve all problems. And so the sages are continuing to establish this point that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the enjoyer of the results of all sacrifices in all planets. The Supreme Lord is the sum total of the three Vedas, the owner of everything, and the ultimate goal of all austerity. Therefore, your countrymen should engage in performing various sacrifices for your elevation. So, this is directed towards Vena, that if all the citizens are engaged in proper sacrifices, then who is going to get elevated? The king. Indeed, you should always direct them towards the offering of sacrifices. Do not stop the sacrificial performances. If you stop them, then you will disrespect the demigods. So, this is their overall message to Maharaj Vena. But Vena, as he was extremely demoniac, his response was totally cutting, completely disregarding what the sages told him. And we can learn from this particular section, this deep lesson, that if we pay attention to the instructions of the sages, then who actually benefit? We benefit. These are the four things that are highlighted here: that lifespan, opulence, strength, and reputation. These four things automatically increase just by paying attention to the words of the great sages. And if we do not, then these are the four things that get thoroughly impacted: lifespan, opulence, strength, and reputation. And that's what we are going to see happen to King Vena. So, how was King Vena responding? That you are not at all you are not at all experienced. It is very much regrettable that you are maintaining something which is not religious and are accepting it as religious. Indeed, I think you are giving up your real husband who maintains you and are searching after some paramour to worship. So, in other words, Vena is taking the position of God here and trying to say that there is no power superior to me, and therefore, if you neglect that, then you are going to suffer. So, in this way, he was positioning himself as the Supreme Lord. And why should anyone worship the demigods when I am present? So that's what they're getting reprimanded for. That those who, out of gross ignorance, do not worship the king, who is actually the Supreme Personality of Godhead, experience happiness neither in this world nor in the world after death. And these are the verses that we hear from the Bhagavad Gita. So he is taking the position of God and telling them that you should worship me. as the exclusive Lord of all. And then he furthermore accused the sages of envy, explaining that as king, he was the greatest of the living entities. So all sacrifices should be offered to him. So why worship the demigods when they are simply manifestations of my body? So in this way, the illusion of mistaking himself um, as the Supreme Lord, this was the overall consciousness of Vena, and he was acting out of enormous amount of pride. So in the purport number 26 and 27, Prabhupada is relating to the consciousness of demons, that there are many demons who think of themselves as the supreme and present themselves as the directors of the sun, moon, and other planets. This is all due to false pride. Similarly, King Vena developed the demonic mentality and presented himself as the supreme personality of Godhead. Such demons are numerous in this age of Kali, and all of them are condemned by great sages and saintly persons. And Prabhupada in 23rd purport is further elaborating on this particular analogy that Vena gives of unchaste wife, that it is the duty of the Kshatriyas to engage the Brahmanas in different types of religious activities, and the king is supposed to be maintainer of the Brahmanas. If the Brahmanas do not worship the king but instead go to the demigods, they are as polluted as unchaste women. So this is what Vena was accusing the sages of. And then he's saying that Lord Vishnu, Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, etc., all these predominating deities of the universe, um, they are all great and competent to bestow benedictions or to curse, but they are after all abiding in my body. And for this reason, I am the reservoir of all demigods, and the demigods are simply parts and parcels of my bodies. In this way, he is presenting himself as the center of everything. And then he says that you should abandon your envy of me, and by your ritualistic activities, you should worship me and offer me all paraphernalia. And if you are intelligent, you should know that there is no personality superior to me who can accept the first oblations of all sacrifices. So in this way, King Vena, Prabhupada is stating in 28th purport that King Vena was imitating the Supreme Personality of God and was also speaking out of false pride, presenting himself as the Supreme Lord. And these are all characteristics of a demonic person. And then what happened, that the sages, they considered that the Vena is completely out of control, and therefore they have to take much severe action than just giving him some words of advice, because the king has become completely unintelligent due to his sinful life and deviation from the right path, and therefore he clearly is bereft of all good fortune. So Prabhupada in 29th purport is bringing out the prime symptom of a demon. The demon certainly cannot have any faith in the words of authorities. In fact, they are always disrespectful to authorities. They manufacture their own religious principles and disobey great personalities like Vyasa, Narada, and even the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna. As soon as one disobeys authority, he immediately becomes very sinful and loses all good fortune. This is a very strong statement. The king was so puffed up and impudent that he dared disrespect the great saintly personalities, and this brought him all ruination. And therefore, the sages are now going to take some serious action. The sages were completely broken-hearted by the words of King Vena and became really, really angry at him at this point. and we will see what action they are going to take next. Thank you. Hare Krishna.